Could the Miami Marlins really play ultimate spoiler and sweep the Atlanta Braves? The first game is out of the way and they got a victory, so the Mets have not been mathematically eliminated yet. Is there still hope? Also, Starling Marte, what is the latest when it comes to his injury status? Will the Mets have him back in the lineup by the postseason? I'll discuss that and more on this edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Now, the Marlins not only beat the Braves on Monday, they shut them out. And it just amazes me how you can never predict baseball. You just can't. And here's this Braves team, a win away from a champagne shower, clinching the National League East. They just go up against a 98-win club in the Mets. They spank them all weekend. They sweep. Great at-bats up and down that lineup. And you go to Miami. Let's look at this lineup, okay? And they went up against Jesus Luzardo, who's a good pitcher, by the way. Had a good start, 12 strikeouts over 6 innings, nasty slider, allowed 4 hits, walked 1. He was great. But look at this lineup. You have Dansby Swanson, 2 for 4, both singles, though. You got Ronald Acuna Jr., the leadoff hitter, was 0 for 4. Sorry, but he was before Swanson, obviously. Michael Harris, 0 for 3, 2 strikeouts and a walk. Austin Riley, 0 for 4. Golden Sombrero, 4 strikeouts. Matt Olson, 0 for 4, 3 strikeouts. Travis d'Arnaud, 0 for 3 with a strikeout. William Contreras, 0 for 3, 2 strikeouts. Orlando Arcia, 1 for 3. He had a double. And Robbie Grossman, 1 for 3. So you look at that lineup, 4 hits collectively, 14 strikeouts, just 1 walk. Where was that this weekend? I mean, this is the same lineup that just went up against Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer, and Chris Bassett. And I get that Jesus Luzardo is a good young starter, and he's a lefty. He didn't face any lefties this weekend. But really? Baseball is so weird, man. So personally, I will not allow myself to get excited and think that the Marlins are going to sweep the Braves, because the Braves are too good of a baseball team to go up against Braxton Garrett on Tuesday and lose, right? Way too good. It is almost impossible to think that they would lose to another left-handed starter again. Think about all the righties in this lineup. Like, I know Swanson got a couple hits. What, Acuna couldn't do more. Austin Riley couldn't do more. Contreras and d'Arnaud supposed to match against righties. Arcia, you got Grossman's a switch hitter. I'm confused. Now, they also had a young pitcher in Bryce Elder go, and he's not a great starter. And he gave up an RBI double to Brian De La Cruz in the first. Also an RBI double to Jesus Sanchez. Then Brian De La Cruz hit him with a 2-run homer in the third. And the Marlins got up 4-0, and they carried that. So you never know. I mean, the Marlins are frisky. They just took 3 or 4 from the Brewers before this. They're playing at home. The Braves are a far superior team at home than on the road this season. They're 55-26 at home. They're 45-34 on the road. The Marlins actually have a worse record at home than on the road. They're 33-46 at home, 35-46 on the road. But you never know. They're 7-3 in their last 10. Hottest team in this division, not named the Atlanta Braves, is the Miami Marlins at 7-3 in their last 10. Meanwhile, the Mets and the Phillies, who are both in the wild card right now, or presumably, I should say, for the Phillies, are 4-6 in their last 10. The Nationals are 3-7. So it's not impossible, but really, it's extraordinarily improbable. Yet there's still a series to be played. The Mets are going to have 3 against the Nationals, and there's no reason to just completely hang them up yet and just stop playing. You might as well play this thing out, see what happens. Now, after the Mets got rained out, which I have failed to mention through the first however many minutes of this podcast. Now you got a doubleheader on Tuesday. The problem is there's rain in the forecast the next 2 days. So where does that put the Mets? It's essentially a meaningless series as long as the Braves win a game. But there's no guarantee they win a game. So now, who knows? We'll see if the Mets get a doubleheader in on Tuesday. It's going to be single admission starting at 4:10. So if they can get those 2 games in, who knows? The Mets can sweep a doubleheader and the Braves happen to lose to the Marlins again. They'll still be mathematically in it going into the final game of the season. That would give us an entirely different conversation to have when it comes to Jacob deGrom and what you would do in that scenario. But for now, I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'm not going to pretend like this is going to end in the Mets winning the division until the Braves lose again tomorrow and the Mets sweep a doubleheader that they actually get to play. If all that happens, we can maybe do some hope trafficking going into the final day of the season. But for now, I think it's just a matter of time. But the Mets are still mathematically in it for at least, I guess, another 24 hours here. Starling Marte, though, not great news on him. We will discuss that in just a minute. But first, betonline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find out the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all of your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite game and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Starling Marte attempted to take some soft toss today. The results were not good. And if they're not good during soft toss, when is he going to be able to face 100-mile-per-hour fastballs again? I don't know. And now it's getting really concerning because suddenly it was, all right, will you get Starling Marte back for this series? Will you get him back for the wild card round? Now you wonder, are they going to see Starling Marte in the divisional round? Are we going to see Starling Marte in a championship round if the Mets are even fortunate enough to get that far? Or getting hit by that Mitch Keller pitch on the hand, did that cost Marte the rest of his season? I don't know, because what you're looking at so far is a really tough road to come back if he still can't swing the bat. Think about it. The wild card series is this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So you all but rule him out for that. I think they pretty much already did rule him out for that. You look at the divisional series, they had a day off, I believe, on Monday. That begins on Tuesday. There's one day off in that series, but they really compressed everything down. So you're basically saying if it's going to take him 2 more weeks, well, you already roll out the divisional series. And I guess the earliest we could probably realistically think that Marte could come back would be a championship series. Again, that's if you get past the wild card round, assuming the Braves don't falter down the stretch here. That's if you then get into the championship round, which is getting by the Dodgers without him. And it's tough to see the Mets do that. I mean, you look at what they've done without Starling Marte, they're 12-10. The start of the month in September wasn't great with him. He was on the field for that victory over the Dodgers. That was good. They won the first game against the Nationals. Then they lost that series. And the last 3 games they'll play with Marte, they lost. It was 3 losses in a row. But I don't pin that on Marte. And you look at the production they've gotten since he's been out from their outfielders. Brandon Nimmo has been good. He's hitting 278, 424 on base, 354 slugging. Not a lot of power there, but he's getting on base at a good clip. He has scored 19 runs, which is second on the team behind Pete Alonso. He's driven in 10, has 3 stolen bases, a 139 WRC plus, which again measures hitters based on a league average of 100. So he has been good. And really, you look at the lineup, it's actually shocking how good the numbers have been offensively for these top guys. I mean, we're just going WRC plus. You got Alonso at 178, Eduardo Escobar, who just won Player of the Month in September, at 176. Tomas Nido in 14 games since the loss of Starling Marte is hitting 327 with a 340 on base and a 612 slugging percentage for a 170 WRC plus, has 3 homers. Daniel Vogelback getting on base at a 426 clip. Jeff McNeil hitting 367 with a 443 on base percentage. And Francisco Lindor, while his series was bad in Atlanta, hit 306, 337 on base, 510 slugging, a 141 WRC plus, 4 home runs, 17 RBIs. But the players that were thrust into more playing time. Mark Canha probably would have been in the lineup every day anyway, but you do have to look at the outfield production since Marte went down. He's hitting 218, 358 on base is okay, but those numbers have been trending down. He was doing better at the beginning of the month, and lately it's just been a really tough road for him. 107 WRC plus, just slightly better than your league average hitters. Tyler Naquin getting a little more playing time. Hasn't done much with it. Hitting 220, only has one home run since Marte went down. 278 on base, 380 slugging, 91 WRC plus. And the big guy to me is Louis Guillorme, man. I mean, not giving the Mets good at bats. He's my guy. I love seeing him in the lineup. What he brings to the Mets defensively is great, but you're in this point where you're trying to find some answers offensively, and he's just not giving you anything. He's hitting 188. This is again since Marte went down. 316 on base, 188 slugging. Does not have an extra base hit. 64 WRC plus. So he's just not been a great bat for that. He is walking at a 10% clip. Give him credit for that, but overall, it has just not worked out for the Mets. And you look at the numbers against left-handed pitching that haven't been good, and it's not help when you have Darren Roth, who obviously we don't need to talk about anymore. It appears like this season's over with this neck strain, but he's looking at a 14 WRC plus hitting 125 with a 125 slugging, 222 on base. You got Mark Vientos, 133, 257 on base, 267 slugging in his first 35 big league plate appearances. And Francisco Alvarez 0 for 8, striking out. Was it 3 out of the 8 plate appearances there? Hasn't looked good for him as well. So without Marte against lefties, here you are. And it just is so unfortunate because the guy was having an unbelievable first season with the Mets. And that's where I want to close the show. If this was the end of the season for Starling Marte, how will we look back and remember it? Because I think it has been a really successful season. But the injury that happened here down the stretch is going to color it. And it's not his fault he got hurt, hit in the hand there, but it's just bad timing. And it's crazy because the Mets were hit by so many pitches all year. And a lot of guys hitting the hands, and they just seem to always end up fortunate. Francisco Lindor slams his finger. He ends up okay. I think Pete Alonso had a hand at one point. He ends up fine. Those are guys you can't lose. Nemo, I believe, has gotten hit in the hand. Canha has gotten hit in the hand. But you get to this point where the one that finally hurts you is a guy that is just irreplaceable on this roster. The combination of speed, power, defense. Starling Marte is as close to a 5-tool player as the Mets have. Francisco Lindor is definitely a 5-tool player, but outside of Lindor, he's the next best thing they have in that regard. And now without him, you're just left trying to, figure out how to replace him in the lineup. And so far, it has not been easy for Buck Showalter to find solutions, but we'll go through what solutions he has. And also, like I said, I want to put kind of a bow on what has been Marte's at least regular season so far, because it was a very good season in a Mets uniform for the first time. Before we get to that, though, a quick word from our sponsors. Starling Marte comes to the Mets after what was basically a career year last year. I mean, you look at his numbers, and 2014 was a solid season when it comes to F4 that was comparable, and some of the offensive numbers. This is when he was 25 years old. I believe that was prior to a steroid suspension for him. He hit 291, 356 on base, 453 slugging, a 132 WRC plus, 13 home runs, 30 stolen bases, 73 runs scored, 56 RBIs, 4.5 F4. The year prior, he had a 4.3 F4. Had the following season where the offensive numbers take down, 3.3 F4. 2016, good season, 3.8 F4. 2017, that was the year he was suspended, only played 77 games, comes back in 2018, has a really nice year in Pittsburgh, 4.1 F4, defense really playing up in center field, I believe, at that point, with McCutcheon on the way out. And then, 2019, again, a similar season. Then 2020, he's great for the Marlins after they acquire him. You get to 2021, and he hits 310, 383 on base, 458 slugging, a 134 WRC plus, at 12 home runs, 89 runs scored, 55 RBIs, 47 stolen bases, 5.4 F4. Really, really good year. Compare that to this year, the numbers did tick down, but I still think that what he meant to the Mets was just invaluable. To lose that guy has hurt so much. You look at his numbers for the season, hitting 292, 347 on base, 468 slugging, 136 WRC plus, so 36% better than your league average hitter. The defensive numbers have hurt him when it comes to F4 this season in right field. For whatever reason, you look at his defensive run saved out there, and it hasn't been what I feel like the eye test has told us, because you look at the numbers this year out there, and it's 3 defensive runs saved, but then you look at the ultimate zone rating actually is where it's hurting him when it comes to F4. And now that I'm looking at it here, a minus 8.2, and his UZR over 150 is minus 11.1. And actually his outs above average is -2. So for whatever reason, the defensive metrics aren't painting as pretty of a picture as I think we have watched unfold this season, day in, day out. Having his arm in right field to control guys trying to take that extra base has been big. Seems like he's gotten to a lot of the balls in the gap, and having him and Nimmo out there has really been kind of the backbone of the outfield defense. You lose that, and it just takes such a key component out of your lineup, because suddenly you can't have Jeff McNeil as your starting second baseman. You're putting him in right field. And if it's not him in right field, it's Tyler Naquin. And basically, what it comes down to is Tyler Naquin or Louis Guillorme. Which one of them is going to step up? I honestly believe that based on the defense, the Mets are going to play Guillorme in the playoffs, and they're going to put McNeil in right field. I think that is the way they're going to go in that series against Atlanta. That was basically the decision the Mets made. There was the one game where they started Naquin, I believe, because he had the 2 home runs off of Kyle Wright the last time the Mets faced Kyle Wright. But when we get into October, I imagine it's going to be Louis Guillorme, and then that means it's going to be Eduardo Escobar at third, McNeil and right, with Canna and Nimmo in the outfield. You need Canna to step up a little bit to make up for the lack of production you're getting from Starling Marte, particularly against left-handed pitching, because really that is the thing. Losing Starling Marte has just exasperated what has been one of the biggest issues for the Mets all season, because Starling Marte this year against lefties was hitting 302, 366 on base, 511 slugging, a 153 WRC plus. I imagine that is the best any Mets hitter has done this year. I'll look it up really quick to confirm, but I believe he has been the Mets' best bet against lefties. And now you lose him, and again, that issue that you already have just gets magnified. You look at the season numbers for the New York Mets, and yes, against left-handed pitching, Starling Marte's WRC plus is 20 points higher than the next closest Met, which is Pete Alonso, and Eduardo Escobar and Brandon Nimmo are both at 130 as well. Lindor at 125, McNeil at 125, Canna at 115 when it comes to WRC plus. But when you look at the slugging percentage, it's Eduardo Escobar at 519, Starling Marte at 511. On base percentage, it's Jeff McNeil at 376, Starling Marte at 366. But you look at just the overall production you're getting, and Starling Marte has been so good. 7 home runs against lefties, driven in 18 runs. He's just been awesome. And now without him, the Mets lineup against left-handed pitching isn't great. And right now in the next upcoming series, assuming it is the Padres or even the Phillies, that'll be okay, because you're going to get probably 2 righties in either series. If it's the Padres, you're going to get Joe Musgrove and Yu Darvish. If it's the Phillies, you're going to get Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola. Now, there's still a Ranger Suarez to worry about and a Blake Snell to worry about in each respective series. You get to the Dodgers series, though, it's potentially what? Julio Urias, Clayton Kershaw, Tyler Anderson, and they're going to know the numbers, and they're probably going to throw a lot of lefties against the Mets. That's going to be an issue. So hopefully some magical healing can happen here. Maybe you can shoot up that finger with cortisone, or I don't even know what. Get him back onto the field, and productive for that big series if you're fortunate enough to get to it. Otherwise, though, I just find it hard to believe that without Starling Marte, the Mets can go toe-to-toe with a 110-win team and come out victorious because that is how important he has been for the Mets this year as one of their all-stars. But we'll see what happens. Not good news on him, but good news for the day as the Braves lost and the Mets didn't play. On tomorrow's show, we'll see if the weather permits the Mets to play a doubleheader against the Nationals. And we'll see if the Marlins can play a little more spoiler as this season, when it comes to the NL East race, is not over just yet. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB, hosted by Paul Francis Sullivan. Locked On MLB is where you want to go to stay up to date with everything going on in Major League Baseball. You can follow Locked On MLB wherever you get podcasts.